Okay, here we are. Finally, the day has come. Good evening, morning, and afternoon, depending on where or which part of the planet you all are joining in from. A warm welcome to our speakers, guests, well-wishers, donors, sponsors, and our audiences. I am Tejasvi Jain, the founder director of Ririti Foundation for Museums, Galleries, and Heritage Sites. Ririti Foundation works with museums and heritage sites across India in the areas of audience development, capacity building, and education. Over the last few years, we have conducted audience research projects, ran volunteer programs and museum festivals, curated house museums, and facilitated numerous workshops for museum professionals. On behalf of my entire team, we present our latest project, Undivided Identities, Lesser Known Stories of Partition, an immersive, engaging, and interactive online exhibition on the experience of the partition. It highlights the human side of this landmark event. The partition exhibition or experience brings the forefront the voices and experiences of the ordinary people and the collective suffering they had to endure. Over the past few decades, partition scholars have been investing time in the shifting gaze of the history, which has been the way it has been viewed, and also retelling it through the stories and narratives of experiences of ordinary people. This exhibition also is an attempt to bring a pedagogical shift within the way partition is taught in schools. It bridges the transnationality and national and the personal and emerges a collective perspective of this event, and which kind of closely defines the identity, the South Asian identity. This exhibition is a space for people to experience what a partition survivor would have gone through. It employs a decision-based branch narrative, which allows the viewer to make decisions on behalf of the characters, effectively increasing their involvement in the story. One of the main objectives of this project was to engage young people. We have young people from India and Glasgow who have helped with the research, design, and development along with the Ririti team. We also had school students from Aga Khan, Bangladesh, Vidyashilp and Shivnadar, India, and City School, Lahore, Pakistan, as our partner schools. And the students from these schools also conducted interviews, and that research and the work which they have done will feed into the archives, the digital archives, which we will also put shortly, which we will upload shortly. We also have lesson plans and workshops, about which I will talk a little bit later. A project of this size is not possible without the support and team of many, many people. I would like to thank all the people who are involved in this, right from our well-wishers, people who believed in us, our partners, our donors, and not to forget my team. This project was made possible by British Council, and who we have partnered with, and who has generously supported this, along with Glasgow Life Museums. I would also like to thank our initial donors and sponsors, Canara Bank, WTC, World Trade Centers, IFA, India Foundation for the Arts, Ms. Ahelia, Aditya Sondi, Sajju Jain, Dr. Lakshman, Dr. Rajesh, Frank Coelho, and Harish Jaktiani for their support. I would now like to invite Juliet Dean, without which this exhibition just was not possible. A big, big thank you to Juliet. Juliet is the Senior Program Manager at British Council UK. She has been involved in many international projects as a producer and project manager over the last 20 years. She is the main person spearheading all the initiatives under our Shared Cultural Heritage Initiative, and works with, in this present project, works across Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, and the UK partners. She has also successfully designed and co-developed or co-delivered arts projects between the UK and China, India, Brazil, Japan, France, Germany, Caribbean, and the list is long. So over to you, Juliet.
Thank you very much, Teshasvi. I have to, I had some notes here, which I've just lost. So I'm just going to have to speak off the cuff. They've just disappeared for some reason. Yeah, thank you very much for giving the opportunity to speak. As Tishbi says, I work for the British Council. I'm actually based in Scotland. And I oversee our Shared Cultural Heritage, which is a program, a youth focused heritage program based both in the UK and in South Asia, and India, Pakistan and Bangladesh. And OSCH is really about making museums and heritage spaces more diverse, more representative for young people, and more accessible. But it's also about opening up dialogue between young people from the UK and South Asia, exploring their shared cultural heritages. And we have 14 partners on this program, 11 of them in South Asia. And through our partners, we are running these projects in their cities. So we have programs, for example, with the Indian Music Experience Museum in Bangalore, and with MAP Museum, and also with Glasgow museums. But we also have these international collaborations, which is a really exciting part of the project, whereby our partners in the UK and South Asia collaborate together with the young people. And Undivided Identities is a really excellent example of this collaboration, because what it does, it allows, what it has done here is it's allowed us to explore this really vital topic, partition, which sadly is not taught in schools in the UK. It's not part of the national curriculum. And I know that it is being taught in South Asia schools, but it's this particular approach of having more of a kind of a user-based and looking more at the human stories is very new. But yeah, going back to this situation in the UK, where decolonization is happening very slowly, sadly too slowly at the moment. It is starting to happen across our institutions, and through OSCH, for example, in Glasgow, one of our programs is called Changemakers, where young people, in fact, we have 4 of them involved in Undivided Identities. So we have Ish, who's speaking in a bit, Malini, Sami and Sehar. They're all change makers as well on the Glasgow programme, and they're looking at the collections at Kelvin Grove Museum, the collections relating to empire, and really looking at what narratives are being told and coming up with new narratives which are more representative and more nuanced. So this process of decolonization is happening slowly in the UK. But going back to partition, it's what I feel is that this project really goes quite a long way to really sort of opening up these dialogues and to create a really important interactive tool for the sector, for the education sector and the cultural sector to use. And I really, I think I've had a good sort of navigation around the site, and I find that the work is really, really extraordinary. The amount of work that's gone into this project is incredible. And I think that working, to achieve this just within a sort of like within a core team is one thing, but to actually work, across teams, working with new teams, working with young people, working across different time zones, different cultural approaches is very challenging. And what you've created is something really, really extraordinary. I mean, I find it's very visceral, it's very hard hitting. It's very painful at times to view. Technically and creatively, it is fantastic. I think the approach of having a choice-based game as well is a really excellent idea. And I know that I've heard that some people are already going to use this idea for other contexts, but having that, having this as a kind of a game or as a tool where you have different narratives and different stories and you can go back to it again and again, I think is a really novel and interesting way of approaching the subject. So I have to apologize because all my notes have disappeared. So I was speaking off the cuff, but I just wanted to say I can't thank you and commend the entire team enough for what they have achieved. I mean, not only the process, but also the end product is extraordinary. So I look forward to seeing it being rolled out in schools in the UK and South Asia. And congratulations to everyone again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Juliet, for the support and the encouraging words. I would now like to invite our keynote speaker of the evening, Urvashi Battalya. It gives me immense pleasure to tell you that when we started this project 2.5 years ago, of course, now it's taken a different shape, but when we started, it was only Bangalore centric. But when we started that, Urvashi Battalya's book was the first one we started off. And that has given us a lot of sense of direction in how we wanted to approach our material. For people who don't know Urvashi Battalya, she is a very well-known and renowned Indian feminist writer, activist, and publisher. She is the author of many books on partition, The Other Side of Silence, and Speaking Peace are two among them. She's also the co-founder of Kali for Women and the director of Zuban, which is a leading independent publishing house. We truly appreciate that you have agreed to join us for this event. Over to you, Urvashi.
Thank you so much, Tejasvi. And Juliet, thank you. I think it's entirely appropriate that at an event that talks about the memory of partition, you should have lost your notes and had to speak from memory. I mean, what could be more fitting? Thank you to the Ririti team for asking me to do this. And thank you everyone for being here. The idea of a keynote speech is a bit scary because it sounds like I might be speaking for hours, but I shan't. The Ririti team has given me a very strict thing of speaking for 8 minutes. So I'm going to try and fit everything that I have to say in 8 minutes. So I'm delighted to be part of this initiative that actually brings into place a very, very interesting new way of approaching the growing work on the partition of India in 1947 and its subsequent impact and developments. So, from its early beginnings, say a little over 2 decades ago, when historians began to turn to oral history and to look at the experiences of people who were the direct survivors of partition. From that moment to today, we have seen a great development of different kinds of methods to explore this really important history of ours. And those include not only oral histories, but also include looking at partition through the prism of films, through documentaries, through literature, of course, which has always been there, through exhibition, through art, through museums, archives, graphic stories, and so much more. And now we have different initiatives like the initiative that Ririti has just inaugurated or is going to inaugurate, which opens up other dimensions. And all of these, I think these explorations are really important to mark certain things. And I'm going to come to them in a minute. So one, we have new methodologies that allow us to approach this moment in our history. Two, it's not only those new methodologies, but with the opening up of these histories, we are also looking beyond the first two theaters where people automatically turn to for partition, which are Punjab and Bengal. But now we are looking at the spatial dimensions of this history that allow us to take in many parts of our countries. In India, for example, Gujarat, Ladakh, Kashmir, the Northeast, the Khasi Hills, the Assam and the Bengal, and so much more. You know, we are Bangalore, Karnataka, Mysore, the history of Mysore. So we are also expanding our horizons to look at those kinds of histories. And I think one of the remarkable things is that there is a way in which these explorations are not led by academic historians within the disciplinary boundaries of history, but they are led by ordinary people, by you and me, people whose history this is, to whom this history and its legacies belong, and people who are asserting their right to explore this history through personal stories and in very many other ways. And what does that actually give us? A lot of the time, the question is raised, you know, you're looking at oral histories, you're looking at people's testimonies, you're looking at memory, but memory is changeable, it's expedient, it's contingent. How do you match memory against fact and so on? And I think we can't reject those arguments, but we have to take them on board, and we have to see what the kind of work that is happening today gives us that mere factual histories, and I use those words advisedly, are unable to give us. So traditionally, historical disciplines lead us to the past in terms of facts, and facts mean things like numbers, government documents, policies, the discussions between politicians, and so on and so forth. Those facts, while important, have no way of coming even close to the multiple layered experiences of partition, say, in the lives of ordinary people, and how they lived this event in complex ways, how it impacted their lives in messy ways, how they took the decisions that they took, and why they took the decisions that they took, and what those decisions meant for generations to come after that. You see this in the histories of women, you see this in the histories of migrants, you see it in so many different places. Another thing that oral histories, testimonies, talking to people gives us is a different understanding of who people are. Who are these people? They are not our politicians only, although we don't leave them out, but they are also, let's say, they are people whose histories are separated by class, by caste, by gender, by location, by region, by sexuality, so much more. And we are able to approach all of these things. And another, I think, very important development is that so much of this work is being done by young people. A lot of the time, people say memory jumps a generation. Sometimes it jumps 2 generations. What I find very interesting today, as somebody who has been involved in working on partition for nearly 30 years, is to see the numbers of young people who are entering this history and who are bringing their concerns. So they're exploring personal histories. They are crossing borders using the internet in ways that my generation was never able to do because we were constrained by the physical borders and the limitations of travel and so on and so forth. And they are going beyond that, as this project is doing, in involving multiple actors, different countries, and in going beyond seeing the histories, for example, of India and UK, the countries that are involved here, merely in oppositional ways, because there are ways in which people who might have been the colonizers also want to look back at their histories and learn something from that. So all of these dimensions, I think, are coming into the historical exploration so far, and the way to this has been opened up by oral history. I think Ririti's Undivided Histories project, to me, brings in another crucial dimension here. What it is doing is to reach out to young people in an immersive and involving and interactive kind of way, because while the opening up of partition histories has meant, at least in some of our textbooks, in schools, and in some ways in our universities, that the aspects of oral history are no longer able to be dismissed, and people are studying those histories. But we still need a way to reach out to younger people in schools to make those histories close to them. And through the kind of workshops that you're planning, but in particular through the website, which allows you to enter a person's circumstances, I won't say a person's mind, a person who is caught at the cusp of a historical development that is impacting their life, and to ask yourself the question that that person must have asked and tried to answer. The question of what would I do if I was caught in this kind of situation? Would I take X decision or Y decision? Would I go? Would I stay? Would I help my friend? Would I abandon my friend? And things like that. And in the process, what the exhibition does is also give you snippets of historical information, which then become essential for you to understand that personal moment of decision or division or whatever it is that is happening in that person's life. And in an effortless kind of way, therefore, you absorb you absorb multiple aspects of that history. You absorb what is happening factually, which political party is doing what, etc. You absorb what's going on in people's lives when they're eating dinner and they're sitting down to food, what is on the table, what's hanging in the background, and you try to answer the questions that are being posed to people. So I really want to congratulate you and the team for putting together this rather wonderful way of examining our history and owning that history and bringing it into our lives, because that's going to make people, young and old like me, think about the many dimensions of this history which have been in our minds, but which we haven't thought about in quite these terms. And I think that's really brilliant, and many, many congratulations to you. And Tejasvi, we are going to open the exhibition right now, right? We're declaring it open. So with these words, which I hope I've limited to 8 or 9 minutes, I don't know, but I would like to say thank you for letting me declare this exhibition open.
Thank you. Thank you, Urvashi. So with box, I will quickly just take a minute to just show you some aspects of the exhibition. So Shalaka, if you can share your screen, super. So it starts with you clicking anywhere to kind of give you a brief introduction. When you scroll down after your introduction, you come across a choice of 4 stories which you will need to decide from. When you click on any of these 4 stories, there is a small summary or a brief which comes up, and then you play. When you play, when you kind of scroll down, at the end of your, there's a video which plays. We can just skip the video right now. Yes. And when you scroll down, that's how your story unfolds. And at the end also, you will have a decision which you need to make. So that's the decision which you as a person need to make as the viewer. And then as you proceed, you will also see something which is a fact file. Can you continue? Yeah, you can click on any one. Yeah. And at the end, you should see, yeah, continue. There are not everywhere you will see a fact file. Some areas you will see a fact file, which kind of gives you an idea of the historical context from where this story emerges. So it's a great resource for, there you go, that's the fact file. So this is a great resource for teachers and students to kind of link the events at the actual events along with what the story is talking about. So yeah, you can close the screen, and we will take 2 minutes. The link is in the chat box. Please mute your Zoom settings so that you can hear the sound, which is an integral part of this exhibition or experience. And we'll give you 2 minutes, and please come back for behind the scenes discussion with the team on how they kind of went about the various aspects of creating this wonderful exhibition. And if you have any problem, please put your queries in the chat box and we will answer them. Can all of you see the link which is there now put up on your chat box?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I hope you were all able to get a brief glimpse of the exhibition. I know it's very captivating and you would want to finish your story, but I would request you to just give it a pause and come back to the launch here. Yes, it does give us goosebumps. Yes, some very powerful and fully engaging. Yes, it is. And thank you very much for the comments. Please let them come, please keep them rolling in. As you must have experienced while viewing the exhibition, sound plays a very important and a crucial role in the exhibition, in the entire experience here. I would like to invite Karthik Ahuja, who has designed the sound and composed all the sound effects and music for this exhibition. Karthik is a music composer, producer, audio engineer, and a musician from New Delhi, India. Over to you, Karthik.
Thank you, Tejasvi. Hello, I hope you guys can hear me. Yeah, so my name is Karthik. I did the sound design for the project and I composed the music for it. And I'm going to be honest here, like my exposure to Partition has just been films. Like I've hardly watched Gandhi. Like being very honest, like books and movies are the only exposure I got. So this was a super interesting project for me, considering like I had to explore a subject which I had just basic information about, at the same time using something that I had good knowledge about. So like it was really cool for me at that same moment. And one thing that I realized working on the project and like doing sound is like the idea of partition for like majority of people, or usually it's like some kind of a visual trigger that comes to mind. And so the question that usually pops up is like what it would have been like, what it would have looked like, even when our grandparents tell us stories and everything. For me, I was thinking through my ears. So my major question that popped up was what it would have sound like. So that was something like really attracted me to the project. And I thought like this is like a challenge worth taking up. So yeah, I'm just going to share my screen and we can go through some of the sounds and some of the music that I made, and we can talk about what was the thinking behind it, how I made certain sounds sound that way. So yeah, I'm just going to share my screen. Just give me a bit. Yeah, I hope you guys can see my screen now.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I'm just going to play something, just react, or just let me know if you can hear it.
Yes, we can.
Cool, thank you. So the idea behind the music was majorly to create this cohesive sonic world. Like everything, like you can't, the idea was not to have polar opposite of sounds. Everything had to be in that world of 1947, 1948, like the time around that place. So I used a lot of things that inspired that time. So people used to record at tape machines. The first thing that you're going to notice, like the moment you enter into the exhibition, is this noise crackle that comes up, which is this. And I'm not sure if you are able to hear it. You can increase your volume if you want. But the idea was because it kind of brings the viewer closer to what's happening, especially because the only mode of recording at that time was tape. This is actually kind of like a characteristic thing that I did to just make sure like it gives you a feel that it's like it's a time that's behind you. So according to like the whole thing, my main aim with the music was to like keep the user, the reader, the viewer, the listener, all four identities engaged in one single person. So like that was the main aim around it. Like I wasn't thinking in terms of being a music professional while I was working on this, but more in terms of like what would I do? How would I be thinking about sound in that moment? So another example I'm going to take is about the music that I did. So on the second story, it's about Bengal. So just to add certain kind of cultural texture to it, I started using these instruments based out of those states. So there's this instrument called Dotara, which originated in Bengal. And this is what it sounds like. I'm going to play how I made it after that. So this is what I originally used. And to make it sound in that time and also a little hybrid, the idea was to make it sound a little broken. So I made it kind of this way. The one thing that you're going to notice in the music is the use of silence a lot. Because the material was all reading, like the idea behind the music was to literally utilize silence the most. So it's just the whole music bed is kind of extremely sparse. It's just two notes and it goes. Like there's a sense of extreme randomness. Also, because you're reading, you don't want to make out that, oh, the music repeated. It's that timeless that like you won't be able to make out when the music starts repeating. It's kind of like a loop that keeps happening, and with extreme sort of randomness happening in between it. I am gonna go to another thing now. So this is one of the scenes I did for story 3, and this is one of the sound which I actually faced like a little challenge with. So I think I'm gonna ask the room what it sounds like first, and then I'm gonna tell you what it actually is. So I'm just gonna play the sound. Oh, yeah, I'm going to repeat that again. Please feel free to participate if anyone has an idea what it sounds like. Yeah. Anyone?
Yeah, in the chat we have riots, faraway bullets hitting gunshots.
Yeah. But the first thing that you're going to hear is actually a man being stabbed. And you can hear the blood pouring down as well. The idea was like, sounds like these are something that you can't like even Google it and you won't be able to get it directly. Like, plus you can't record like a stabbing man, no, like stab him and I'm going to put a mic, obviously. So like the thing I had to work on this was, it's actually an apple being pierced just super aggressively. I had to make it sound in that way that it seems like a man being stabbed. This is the original sound that I used. It's just an apple being knifed. And this is the sound that we went with. Yeah. So I'm just gonna stop share. Yeah. So the whole idea behind this whole soundscape and everything was just to bring like this interplay of music and sound happening throughout this exhibition. And it's kind of like a hybrid sonic identity that we kind of wanted to put on this project. So yeah, like I enjoyed my time a lot. I went like super out of the box to get something like this done. And yeah, like I'm quite happy with how it's come about. Yep. Sounded like swords searing, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you
That's-
very
thank
much, Karthik, for taking us through this and, through kind of giving us a preview or a sneak peek into the creation of the various sounds. And when we were just hearing this, I could, my heart started beating faster.
Yeah,
So,
like there are certain moments where you're gonna like it's literally
yes.
attracting and distracting the viewer a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah.
So I am sure, like I have a lot of questions for you. People also have, but
Okay.
we will take all those questions in the end. Now,
Sure. Yep. Thank you.
the Punjab March 1947. Thank you. The Punjab March 1947 storyline, which you see in the exhibition, has been researched and mapped by Ish. It holds references to his own family history of partition. And Ish is a lawyer, social activist, and one of the change makers under the OSCH collective, and an history enthusiast from Glasgow. So over to you, Ish.
Thank you for such a kind introduction, Tejasvi. Hello, everyone. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Yeah. Firstly, I'm really glad to be here and work on this project. I feel this project is all the more important with the context of the time it's coming out with, because not only does it give us a glimpse of the realities of partition, it also helps in preserving them in the context of the time, where the direct oral narratives of the partition are slowly withering away. I'll be sharing my experiences of interviewing for the project. For this project, I interviewed my grandmother, her siblings, and a few of her friends. I grew up with my grandparents. So for me, I have been brought up with these people my entire life. I knew that a part of this project was for me to hear the tragedies, but the praxis of the same made me realize that I wasn't just hearing them, I was feeling them through their voices. Something which so many times the mainstream discourse of history misses out. These interviews showcased a side I hadn't seen before for many of the interviewees, a side probably hidden due to the pain associated. I heard anger and frustration, and still a sense of not being able to fully comprehend what exactly happened at that time, even though they lived through it. Through such interviews, not only did I know or learn into the daunting realities of my ancestors, but I realized how their past shaped their present and their outlook towards their entire lives. I looked at intersectionalities in a manner I had never looked before after this. My mamu, my uncle, told me instances of violence while hesitantly walking across, being a boy and just witnessing everything to get resources. When I talked to my grandmother, I could see her the being a teenage woman, a girl at that age, and how that impacted her. That her brother, who's half her age, was preferred to go out during such turmoil circumstances than her. Those intersectionalities can only be understood by having a conversation, and this project led me closer towards it. I had attempted to utilize these glimpses and put them across a story, which will be on you all to decide whether it comes across in the same manner or not. Something of this happening in the 21st century is a representation of partition from, as already said before me, from the young generation's eyes. And the depiction is not just something which is happening in the conventional manners, like Urvashi previously brought up. The depiction is happening outside the mainstream discourse of history. We have series like Miss Marvel coming across, and then we have projects which are not only trying to teach us historical facts, but are trying to ensure we get the essence of the emotions which were portrayed across, which are usually whitewashed in written narratives. I hope this really, this project, and after you go through the further exhibitions, puts in and conveys the same emotion which we tried to evoke. And thank you.
Thank you, Ish, for sharing the journey and taking us through the insights of how you kind of mapped your journey and your experiences. And this is exactly one of the reasons why we wanted to do the project and involve people. So our younger students, the students from the schools in Pakistan, Bangladesh, and India, also have come up to us and have said how just taking the interviews has changed the way they look at partition. They look at Pakistan and India as well. One of the reasons when we took up this topic was to also to go deviate from what the common media talks about between the rift between the countries across the borders. So this is a sincere attempt to show people as they are, show their experiences without being judgmental about countries and about communities. It's the suffering, it's the hope, it's the dilemma, it's the angst, it's the those kind of emotions, along with the facts which we wanted to try and intertwine within these narratives. I would like to invite Banu Galot, who is the project head. She is a cultural practitioner and a historical research. Her research and practice is rooted in the study of these difficult histories of South Asia. And she has been constantly working towards raising awareness of such histories and understanding how and where they are commemorated and what is the public space they occupy. Over to you, Banu. You are on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Tejashvi, and good evening, everyone. So I'm just going to use the next few minutes to reflect on the research methodology for this project, because while the characters are somewhat fictionalized in the stories that you'll engage with within the exhibition, their experience is very much rooted in research. So I think it's important to look at what that research looked like and what the process entailed and how are these stories anchored. So before we began mapping the stories, the first thing we wanted to do was identify in which part of the subcontinent these stories would originate in. Once we identified that, we then read academic articles to understand the context of that region, specifically while partition unfolded, to understand when migration began for people of that region. Was it before partition? Was it during? Was it right after? Once we understood that, we then sort of developed the characters. Even for Ish's story, which is his own family story, within it there are characters that are fictionalized, which needed to be developed. We needed to understand in terms of class and gender where they're coming from, because that would determine their experience of partition, how they travel, where they go, etc. Once we had that, our very last thing was to find what the last trigger would be for them to move, for them to leave everything they've ever known and to go to a place they know very little of. Because while collectively on a large scale, there was displacement and violence during that time, at a personal level, people still hoped for this to fade, for there to somehow be a situation where they wouldn't have to move. To be able to understand this last trigger, we heard countless available oral history interviews of people who witnessed partition to understand what the last trigger looked like for them. So for some, it was the escalating violence in nearby towns. For some, it was perhaps their neighbor engaging in violence that convinced them to move. For others, it was rioting mob knocking at their door that convinced them to move. Once we understood what the last triggers looked like for people who witnessed partition, we sort of built our stories around that. So, for example, in the East Bengal story, when you engage with it, you will realize that it's the Karachi riots that erupted on 6 January 1948 that has sort of been used as the last trigger for the family to think of what they want to do next. At crucial points within the exhibition, you will notice something called the fact files, which Tejasvi also spoke about. These are researched articles written by the team and shed light on the politics that were unfolding at that very given moment. And I think what the fact files allow us to achieve within the exhibition are two things. One, we are able to present a holistic view of partition without actually interfering with the narrative of the story or the immersive nature of the exhibition. And second, we are able to reflect on how the evolving politics of the time had direct tragic consequences on the lives of ordinary people. So I think the fact files are also a very integral part of the exhibition, but they don't interfere with the narrative. Throughout this process, we've tried to be inclusive, especially in terms of gender and class, which is very important for us. In terms of what the resources that we've used, one is, of course, the available resources online of oral history interviews and academic articles. We've then also referred to oral history interviews submitted by school students from our partner schools in India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh to sort of bring nuances to these stories. We've then used original research conducted by Ririti on the impact of partition in Bangalore. This was particularly for the first story, which is set in Hyderabad, Sindh. And finally, we had Ish and Meher, who mapped their own family's experience of partition for the exhibition. So this is, in a sense, all the resources that we've used, and this is what the research process looked like. But even apart from this, there were so many other spaces that needed to be navigated at every step of building this exhibition from a research point of view. Because partition is not just a difficult history, it is also a contentious history. All communities, whether the Sikh, Hindu, or Muslim, both experienced partition or experienced violence within partition, but also participated in it. So we had to sort of find a way to balance this. So for example, if we had a scene that spoke about the Hindus attacking the Muslims, we tried to, in the same story, somehow show that this episode of violence was retaliated by the Muslims in another part of the region. In doing so, our constant effort was to ensure that when we talk about the violence, we don't isolate any one community. And this sort of balance had to be maintained throughout the stories. Our attempt all along has been to retain the immersive nature of the exhibition with the narrative, but also while doing that, remain extremely authentic to the experiences of people who witnessed partition. And I think that is as briefly as I can tell you about the research process for the exhibition. I also now want to reflect on the creative process of the exhibition, which the creative head would have taken you through, but unfortunately he's not feeling well. The creative head for this project was Shaunak. He is a designer and a software developer with an interest in multimedia art, electronic music, production, and interactive installations. Before, like at some point today, I asked him about his reflections on the creative process for this exhibition. And he said one of the challenges was to ensure that we don't overdo it, that we don't make a website that is distracting or flashy in any way. We let the stories speak for themselves. And therefore, our attempt throughout creatively has been to keep the website simple, and all immersive aspects within the exhibition have been used very, very thoughtfully. So for instance, the animation is only used for the introduction videos for each of the stories and not anywhere else. For the sound, you've already heard from Karthik how we went about it. And it has been synchronized to what you see on the screen or what is happening in the story. In terms of color, we've used color very, very consciously and thoughtfully, and have tried to attach emotions to color. So when a particular emotion arises in the story, we try to use that color. So I think that is, in a sense, the creative process that we followed or tried to keep in mind while building the exhibition. I think that is it from my end, Tejasvi.
Okay. Thank you very much, Banu, for taking us through the research and the creative process involved in creating this exhibition and this experience. Before I open the floor for questions from all of you, I know we are at the fag end of our time, so I'll keep it short. We will, in the next few months, we will put up our digital archives, which will have the research which Ririti has done, and the school students who participated from our partner schools also. And that is available for as a resource tool for students and teachers in the future. We will also have workshops for our partner schools in Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan, and a professional development workshop for teachers in the UK, in Glasgow. Besides this, we will also be conducting workshops for schools who are not part of our partner schools. So please feel free to reach out to us if your schools want us to come and conduct these workshops. We have two workshops, two kinds. One is a free workshop, which is only a limited, we have only 10 slots for that, which will take you through, introduce you through the concept, or introduce you to the partition and how to use this exhibition as a resource. And the paid version, which are 3 workshops, will look at themes of home, migration, identity, belonging. And it introduces students to the national perspectives, the ordinary people's experiences, and how to associate it with the today's times and to bring it and to contextualize it in today's era. So please do fill up the form if you are interested, and definitely visit the exhibition and experience a whole new way of engaging with an important part of South Asian history and identity. Before I open the floor for questions, I would like to thank my amazing, amazing team members, Banu, Shaunak, Lakshmi, Shalaka, Tigi, Garima, Nikhil, Aditya, Ish, Meher, Nikita, Pivri, Karthik, Malini, Sammy, and Shahana. A big, big thank you to all of you. This would not have been possible without the countless hours you guys have spent on this, missing your holidays, working on weekends, the late nights. So a huge, huge round of applause for the entire team. Thank you very much. And now we are open for any questions you have for us.
I would just like to add one last thing. I think throughout building this exhibition, and I forgot to mention that when I was speaking, we also had to constantly remind ourselves and keep in mind that this is being built for students and young people. So what is the kind of language we use and what we cannot? Where should trigger warnings go? We had to work with teachers to understand and sort of amalgamate that into the exhibition, which is also a very, very important and crucial aspect of both building the exhibition and engaging with it.
Thank you. Yes, my question, how did you begin? Did your did you begin by thinking of partition and from within the country and outside of it? So we started this project 2.5 years ago. This is our second this kind of a project. When I say it's this kind, where we are looking at, we take some aspect of history, an important event in history, and try to identify the gaps in the curriculum, in the way it is taught, and to make it relevant, reachable, and relatable for school students. Partition, and we usually contextualize it or localize it as well. So the first project under this, what we took under Itihas, was the World War I and how Bangalore as a city was affected, or how then Mysore state played, what role it played in the World War. Similarly, when we took up partition, we were looking at how Bangalore city responded to partition, because it was far south. And as Urvashi mentioned, that, partition is not just restricted to, Punjab and the north, but there are a lot of other stories which are not known. And that's what we wanted to kind of, unravel and bring into light. So our journey started from looking at stories within Bangalore and how Bangalore as a city responded to the partition. And over the last 2.5 years with, COVID going in and out, this project has evolved and has grown from just restricting it to Bangalore city, and now it has grown across to kind of cover across the borders and include Bangladesh and Pakistan as well. So I hope I've answered your question. How open were people to discuss about partition from within the country and outside of it? Banu, would you like to take that? You're on mute.
I think, Tejashwi, that is best answered with you by you, because you conducted the interviews in Bangalore. Because in my case, I only referred to the interviews that were already conducted and there in really the archive.
So we were very mindful of what we wanted to ask them, and because it was down south, the interviews we took in south, especially in Bangalore, it was a very calculated move. It was not something which they kind of the spur of the moment thought and came, because they have to make that journey. So it's not a spontaneous journey, even when they reached Delhi, they had to figure out things. So they had some sort of sense as to what they might be entering into. So the responses were very different from what the responses you would get with the stories which we've heard from the north. And we've also interviewed not just the partition survivors, but their families, and hearing, and they have been brought up in that, listening to those stories. So it wasn't as difficult as it would have been, say, for Urvashi, who was very close to the people who she was interviewing. So in a way, our interviews weren't so disturbing for them to share with us. They were definitely brought out memories for them, difficult memories, but it wasn't as disturbing as it would have been for some people who really were caught in the midst of it, if that answers your question. I think Caroline has her hand raised. Yes, Caroline.
Thank you so much. First of all, huge congratulations. I think it's so powerful, and I really feel very privileged to have heard about the project today. I just want to ask you whether you have whether you've liaised at all and let them know at Manchester museums with their Hello Future project, because this would be something I think that would be absolutely amazing to use with schools in Manchester and beyond. And I just wondered whether this is for the opening of the South Asia Gallery and co-collaborated projects there in Manchester in the north of England.
Juliet, would you like to answer that, or would you want me to answer that?
Sure. Yeah. So Manchester museums are actually one of our core partners on OSCH. So they are very much aware of the project, and we will be disseminating it through their channels. So
Super.
Yeah, rest assured.
Good.
And sorry, it's pouring cats and dogs here. So if anybody is wanting to speak, you will have to really increase your volume. And sorry if I'm going to be a little loud. Okay, any more questions? Can we take 2 more questions before we wrap up, because we've just exceeded our time. Yeah, this is my first. Okay. So the migration of my stories. So we have Alex Brown saying, while doing the research for the project and gathering stories, did you speak to anyone who made the decision to leave India and Pakistan completely and go to the UK or other parts of the world? Yes, and we have that in one of the stories. Which one? I will leave that up to you to find out. Did you have to sanitize parts of it for the children? Question by Nivedita is, did you have to sanitize some parts of it for children? Yes, in a way that we were mindful, as Banu said, we did speak to teachers to find out what is the, how far we could push ourselves in terms of the language we use, in terms of the descriptions, and in terms of the visuals we would be putting in. One last question.
But I would just like to add to that, but
Yeah.
While doing that, we were also very, very clear that it is impossible to speak about the partition without mentioning violence or gendered violence and things like that. We cannot sanitize that and not mention it. So we were clear that that would have to be part of this, but how we use it and what language we use, certainly we had to work with teachers to develop that.
Okay. We have a question from Prima. Could you talk a little bit about the participation from Pakistan and Bangladesh? How challenging was it to bring together the different narratives and perspectives? Banu, do you want to take that, or should I take that?
What could you repeat the question?
Could you talk a little bit about the participation from Pakistan and Bangladesh? How challenging was it to bring together the different narratives and perspectives? I think when, like within partition, when you shift the gaze to oral histories, it's not that different a narrative. The experience, the grief, the loss, the displacement was felt by people across India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. So even the students that we worked with in terms of them collecting oral history interviews, the challenge was to make them understand how these oral history interviews are conducted and how to approach the interviewee with empathy and compassion and all of that. But the narrative and perspective for partition only shifts when we look at it from a nationalist point of view. But from an oral history and ordinary people's experience, it doesn't change that much across the borders. You can add to that, Tejasvi. Yeah, and we also had workshops with the students, because these are school students we are dealing with. They are not some people, they are not university students who know how to conduct these oral histories. So we had to walk them through the process and also kind of engage the teachers and how they could also support the students while collecting. So we had to closely work with both Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh students as well as their teachers to make this come together. So we've had a few sessions with them. Which age group? This is for 7th standard and above in India. For the youth, for the international curriculum also, it starts from 7th grade. They are kind of introduced to world perspective, so it would fit into that as well. So thank you very much. And if you, we will stay, the core team will stay back if any of you have more questions for us, but the others are, please feel free to leave. And thank you once again, Urvashi, Juliet, and all of you to come and join us on a Saturday evening for the launch of this experience, of this exhibition. Please do engage with it and spread the word. Thank you and good evening.